Thanks for staying with Africa News Network. First, Fast Alive, and this is the Friday edition of ANN7 Prime. And our top story this Parliament's Committee on the Auditor General has tasked the National Treasury and the Auditor General to engage further on municipalities that are struggling financially before the proposed amendments to the Public Audit Act are taken for public comments. And this comes as both entities gave feedback to the committee on the review of the Act. Previously, the Auditor General asked the Standing Committee to review its powers in a bid to curb wasteful and irregular expenditure in government and state-owned entities. IFP MP Naran Singh warned the Auditor General and Treasury not to empathize with rural municipalities in terms of their audit fees, saying these municipalities were not struggling because they were underfunded. He says municipalities are known for mismanaging funds. Committee Chairperson Vincent Smith urged Treasury and the Auditor General to include all concerns raised in their engagements. He says proposals should be concluded before the end of January. Smith further urged the committee to defend the office of the Auditor General.
Sometimes we talk about rural municipalities and those municipalities that cannot afford the audit fees. But it's not because they're rural or they're getting less income, but in many cases because they're mismanaging the funds that they actually have.
I agree that it is unfortunate that sister departments, so to say, take each other to court. But I think Treasury must accept that it's becoming more and more prevalent that departments take the AG to court. So it can't be that the AG gets beaten up if he initiates a court, when every other government department who doesn't like the AG's findings are the ones that are very keen to take the AG to court. If we are unable to pass this thing before June, AG, we will have nothing to pass for you. 2018 is the election year.
And apart from asking for the review of its powers, the Auditor General made some recommendations. The Auditor General has recommended that government departments and state-owned entities produce detailed financial management reports with simple, clear and relevant recommendations relating to their findings. And the Auditor General also recommends that a quarterly engagement program with accounting officers and executive authorities be established to share insights on financial controls. The AG also recommends that departments and state-owned entities support oversight processes through briefings to relevant committees in Parliament. And the Auditor General further recommends that departments and SOEs work closely with National Treasury, the Accounting Standards Board and other relevant departments to find solutions towards improved financial and performance management. And joining us in studio, Begi Khadebe, Transform RSA Deputy Spokesperson, and we have Tsepo Khadima, Political Analyst. Thank you for both of you for making it this evening. Khadima, just looking at the Office of the Auditor General, whether it can be bolstered with more capacity, in your view, where is the lack in being able to at least account and get the necessary qualified audits?
Yeah, my view is that I think, does the Public Auditing Act need to be amended and updated? Most certainly, I think so. Should the Office of the Auditor General of South Africa be given more powers as so asked for today in Parliament? My answer is no. I don't believe that they need any such powers. And I think in this process of review, one of the things that I'll be interested to see is that will there be a proposal to amend the Public Auditing Act to ensure that it actually conforms with either the generally accepted accounting practices or principles or the international financial reporting standards. And I hold course that in terms of the international standards on auditing, that's really the standard we should be applying right across in terms of the state-owned companies as well as the various public entities, and not have this anomaly that we have. We know that the Auditor General does have outside auditors come in. Now, one of the key things that has been asked, and I'm one of the people that has for a long time expressed that grievance against the Public Auditing Act, is this term called clean audit. that clean audit is not an international standard on auditing, and therefore, if you are a newly qualified or you qualified a long time ago, 20 years ago, and had to move away, had to migrate from generally accepted accounting practices, GAAP, into IFRS or IFRS, as some people will say, which is the International Financial Reporting Standards, you won't find this so-called clean audit. So effectively what we are seeing here, when you do an audit, you have to remember this, that the horse is bolted. And how we apply clean audit in South Africa, and even the powers that the Auditor General now seeks to be appropriated to the Office of the Auditor General, is going to actually assist us not in any shape or form, except it increases the risk of practice by somebody who's a chartered accountant, as so registered with the chartered accountants in South Africa, that person most effectively will be at risk to have a non-auditing standard applied on the work that they have done as a chartered accountant, and risk having to lose their license or their accreditation as a chartered accountant. So effectively what you are saying, you need to have financial management that is effective and the financial standing of the enterprise itself. But right now, the way that they want to do it, the horse would have bolted already. And to say that there has to be consequence management, you are not proactive. So the wastage will continue. But if anything, you'll now discourage people from having to join the public service to be subjected to what is a non-accounting and non-auditing standard. And that becomes a wild west for
no, but I mean, in the interest of accountability, though, having the oversight role of National Treasury, the Auditor General, including oversight within municipalities itself, will this not then prevent the mismanagement of funds or wasteful expenditure, Mr. Khateb, in your view?
Us as a Transformation RSA, we want to support and say that the PAA Act needs to obviously be amended for one reason. When you look at a business perspective, particularly for what happened from KPMG and the results, is that we need to see more black accounting firms being empowered to be part of the process of participating into the accounting institution. We look at that the government in this act should include grooming and giving space to black institutions. For example, we have Sizwe Nsalubo, which one of the premier accounting firms that we know. We feel that is little, maybe 1% out of so. And then it means that the finances of the municipalities and SOEs are being perpetuated by this institution who have a right and give the qualified to unqualified report. So what we are saying is that as a Transformation RSA, we want to see black companies being empowered in this, administering and checking balances and finances of government and companies.
Yeah, and Mr. Khateb, as Rekhadima was saying, that the over-reliance on external auditors, we know KPMG having had a long-standing relationship with various government departments, and in this case the Auditor General as well, if they themselves are found wanting and the recommendations overreach what their mandate is, they become either more politicized or have their own opinions about what's really going on, does that not also constitute wasteful expenditure?
It certainly does. I think what you have is that when we introduced in the Public Auditing Act the so-called clean audit, we introduced an animal entirely there that is really pronounced on subjectivity of whoever that will be doing the auditing, because it's not a standard. You can't refer to either IFRS or GAAP in terms of that standard. But I want to go back to the point that is made by Mr. Khateb here. Indeed, you need to have that transformation. If anything, we needed to have seen the Office of the Auditor General being the one that should have been leading in subcontracting work to emerging black firms on the basis of their being qualified and accredited as chartered accountants with the Institute of Chartered Accountants of South Africa, because that is a standard which applies to either a big firm, be it a PwC or a KPMG, or even a smaller firm. So they have unfortunately not done enough in ensuring that there is transformation of this profession, same as all other professional services, be it in the engineering or in the legal sphere or in financial services. So the Auditor General, I think that in this case, needs to find ways and mechanisms of ensuring that they can bring about the much needed transformation. But at the same time right now, I don't believe that they are also crying out for more powers to do so-called consequence management. It is the panacea to the problems of mismanagement that we are seeing happening right across. What you need to have is to ensure that the managers who are financial managers, that there is stronger emphasis on financial management and not so much. Most of the practitioners in the public sphere who are financial managers or CFOs, you find that in many instances they are paralyzed from having to take the right decisions because they are worried about the so-called clean audit. And the Auditor General himself, by the way, concedes that, yes, clean audit is not an international standard on auditing, and yet it was introduced in order to help the public, in layman's terms, to understand what is the status or what is the state of affairs. So the state of affairs, for example, you might have what they would term an irregular expenditure on the basis that at the beginning of the year when we're doing budgeting, because no one is psychic enough, you didn't go and provide for that particular expense you had to incur, which might have been incurred out of necessity. So you do not have, because it is subjective in terms of the judgment call you make, you don't go and make a finding as to whether or not that irregularity or unauthorized expenditure, that was it actually not needed, the qualitative aspect of it and the reasons, the rationale that would go towards that. And I'm saying what you need to do perhaps is to ensure that within be it National Treasury or elsewhere, and of course with National Treasury we are still lamenting following the expose by ANN7 on the 4 billion rand to date and still counting colossal fraud of IFMS, that should have at least helped to bring about the standard, because the auditing rules, they apply right across regardless of the size of the enterprise or the size of the department or the municipality. And that itself, that one-size-fits-all approach, unfortunately, has not worked, and hence it is giving us the picture that it is giving us. And on the other hand, to subject state-owned companies to the Auditor General's rules, unfortunately, has hamstrung those companies from being able to compete on an international basis. Hence, I'm saying this reform and these amendments need to bring about the ability for state-owned companies to be able to operate under the International Financial Reporting Standard and remove some of the shackles that are, or the impediments that are placed upon the state-owned companies by the Public Finance Management Act, which in many instances tie many companies, their hands behind their back, and they are not able to compete, and therefore the economy suffers at the end of the day because it deals with the hardcore of the macroeconomic policy approach of a nation.
Okay, well, let's just bring it down as well. You were talking about the public consultation that will then emanate from this process. But what is it that we ought to be concerned about, especially if municipalities have got a rational justification for how monies were spent, discretionary funds due to natural disasters, etc., and then you end up with an unqualified audit. So that means essentially that the reporting in itself is faulty.
Yeah, we need to look at that fact as well, Cindy, because one of the important things that we need to take into consideration is in other SOEs, you find that an institution does not have a CEO for the period of a year, and they're having acting people, and then it affect the operation and the working of the SOEs in that fact. But I want to come to this point of even small businesses in that area being affected in this particular way. That's why the president of the country has fought that the businesses should be paid within 30 days, because if they don't do that as well, it means that the finances they lapped to another financial year when hence it disturbs and confuses the planning of their finances. When the financial year end, you find that you don't have an acting CEO, you have people who are not in the permanent position that will approve some of the things, and then it affect the operation and the activities of the accounting authority.
Does this speak largely to the weakening of supply chain management processes as well, if there isn't an oversight or, guidelines as to how operations should work?
Yeah, look, there has to be another mechanism, as would generally apply in corporates. And of course, internal auditing is one such mechanism that helps an enterprise, for management to be able to take corrective decisions timeously. But right now, what we have in terms of the Auditor General, first and foremost, I think they are overstretched. They don't have enough manpower. Of course, we know the issues of them not being paid on time as the Auditor General, and as a result, they are not able to carry out the audit at the times that they need to do. But by and large, you find that the manner in which the Auditor General, I think, effectively works or functions is they report on the after effect. So I'm saying you have to prevent. Prevention is better than cure. What they are now crying out for is to have the medicine for the cure after the illness has already set in and diagnosed. I'm saying you have to actually function in such a manner. You start as you want to go along. You function in such a manner that you have got the checks and balances that help the management, not the auditor, that help the management to be able to know if that which they are doing is within the parameters. But also the standard has to be harmonized. And I'm saying if you do not harmonize the standard by which so effectively the Public Auditing Act needs to be harmonized and streamlined to conform with the International Financial Reporting Standard, and not have all of these other things that unfortunately have created maximum confusion with minimum effectiveness.
Gentlemen, we're going to have to leave it there. It is quite a complex matter to go through, but nonetheless, there will be an opportunity for the public to participate once this process has been concluded. But in studio, we have Bheki Radebe, Transform RSA Deputy Spokesperson, and Tsepo Khadima, Political Analyst, joining us as well. We'll take a look at other stories.